which we have all become accustomed to between these two men during his first term. He visited France 4 different times here, and there has been, I think you could fairly and objectively say that there has been sometimes a tense relationship between these two men. At one point, President Macron referring to the threats of tariffs from President Trump as selfish. But then on the other hand, you have also seen President Macron use flattery as a form of building his relationship with Donald Trump. And when you saw these two men here coexist publicly for the first time in 4 years, you heard President Trump, incoming President Trump, say that they had a great relationship. And I think that it was clear the role that President Macron will play with Angela Merkel no longer the head of Germany, and other notable foreign leaders from President Trump's first term no longer in office. It's going to be that continuity between these two men who are going to be paramount to especially the NATO alliance, the U.S.'s relations with the EU, but especially at a time in which there are serious questions about the future of Ukraine's financial support from the EU and the United States. It's going to be imperative for President Macron, who has remained a staunch defender of President Zelensky and Ukraine's defense against Russian aggression, to have the United States and the incoming Trump administration as a committed, continual partner in the defense against Russian aggression. Cool.
That was NBC's Vaughn Hilliard in Paris. Thank you so much again. Now, turning back to the U.S. and the latest regarding the president-elect's top cabinet picks and their chances of being confirmed by the Senate. At the top of the list of his most embattled choices is Pete Hegseth, who Trump picked to be the next Secretary of Defense. There have been multiple reports that have recently surfaced around allegations of past professional and personal misconduct. The allegations against him include a sexual assault claim, financial mismanagement of the organizations he once led, and stories about heavy drinking. Regarding the sexual assault allegation, Hegseth denied the woman's allegations, saying that the encounter was consensual. He paid an undisclosed amount as part of a settlement with her, and he was never charged. Now, NBC News reported this week that according to 10 current and former Fox News employees, Hegseth's drinking concerned his colleagues at the network. This week, Hegseth was on the Hill pushing back against these allegations and trying to drum up support for his nomination by courting Republican senators who actually hold the key to his confirmation. He's going to need all the GOP support he can get. NBC News also reported this week that the allegations have placed his chances of being confirmed by the Senate in real jeopardy. Now, given the Senate having a very, very slim majority of Republicans for this next Congress, Hegseth can only afford to lose 3 Republican votes, assuming that Democrats all vote against him. But Hegseth vows to keep on fighting. And in an exclusive interview with NBC's Kristen Welker for Meet the Press, Trump yesterday says he remains confident in his pick.
Pete is doing well now. I mean, people were a little bit concerned. He's a young guy with a tremendous track record, actually. He went to Princeton and went to Harvard. He was a good student at both, but he loves the military, and I think people are starting to see it. So we'll be working on his nomination along with a lot of others.
Since you bring him up, do you still have confidence in Pete Hegseth?
Yes, I do. I really do. He's a very smart guy. I've known him through Fox, but I've known him for a long time. And he's basically a military guy. I mean, every time I talk to him, all he wants to talk about is the military. He's a military guy.
Have you gotten assurances from senators that he's going to be confirmed? Do you think he can make it?
No. I think he will, yeah. I've had a lot of senators call me up saying he's fantastic.
You don't drink yourself.
No.
You've talked about how devastating drinking can be.
Yeah.
How concerned are you that the person who you picked for this top job at the Defense Department, at least according to those who've worked with him, has struggled with drinking?
But I've spoken to people that know him very well, and they say he does not have a drinking problem.
And that is where Pete Hegseth's nomination stands. We are watching it very closely. Now, another Trump cabinet pick who's being closely watched is former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who was Trump's choice for Director of National Intelligence. A group of nearly 100 former national security officials just signed on to a letter raising concerns about Gabbard. writing, quote, several of Ms. Gabbard's past actions call into question her ability to deliver unbiased intelligence briefings to the president, Congress, and to the entire national security apparatus. Following her trip to Syria, for example, Ms. Gabbard aligned herself with Russian and Syrian officials. When reached for comment by an NBC News spokesperson for Gabbard from the Trump transition team, someone said the letter contained unfounded attacks and insulted the credentials of the signatories. Meanwhile, Trump's threat of retribution against political enemies is reportedly causing the Biden administration to evaluate how it could protect people whom the president-elect could target. NBC News reports that Biden's team is discussing the possibility of preemptively pardoning some individuals Trump has singled out in the past. Now, that's according to two sources who are familiar with the discussions. Among the people who could receive preemptive pardons are Dr. Anthony Fauci, former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, and Democratic Senator-elect Adam Schiff. The Biden administration has yet to make any final decisions, but still, the discussions highlight the uncertainty in Washington ahead, where Donald Trump's return to the White House is causing fears among a number of people about how he might wield power in his second term. For more on this, I'm joined by my friend and colleague, MSNBC attorney and former MSNBC legal analyst and former U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan, Barbara McQuaid, who's also the author of Attack from Within, How Disinformation is Sabotaging America. And also with us is David Graham, staff writer for The Atlantic. Thank you guys for both being with me for this second hour of Velshi. Barb, these preemptive pardons have taken a new sense of importance because of some of the people who Donald Trump has talked about putting in his cabinet. Can you talk about how the incoming administration could use the Justice Department to go after private citizens?
Yes, absolutely. I think when you've got someone like Pam Bondi, who's been nominated for Attorney General and who has said we need to prosecute the prosecutors and investigate the investigators, I think there is some serious concern that people like Jack Smith or Merrick Garland or other people who in good faith were prosecuting cases against Donald Trump might find themselves as the target of prosecution. Similarly, with Kash Patel as the nominee for the FBI director, he wrote a book called Government Gangsters, where he listed a number of public officials that he said were part of the deep state. I think unlike any other administration where you would say, blanket pardons are unnecessary and could damage the institutions of government, in this instance, there really is a very real concern that some of these public officials, public servants could find themselves as criminal defendants. And even if they won't ultimately be convicted in a system because of juries and judges and other protections, even undergoing an investigation could be very expensive and very damaging to their reputations.
David, in The Atlantic this week, you wrote about how Donald Trump has chosen a number of lobbyists and industry leaders for his administration, saying, quote, Trump's staffing decisions, his transition design, and his own behavior show that he is uninterested in even keeping up appearances this time. Trump himself will never say it, but the credo of his second term is coming into focus. Fill the swamp. Can you talk more about this and what you think the Trump team is putting back together?
Yeah, we heard him talk a lot about corruption in the later days of his first election campaign and even in his first presidency. Not necessarily doing a lot about it, but it was an important slogan. And what you see is he's not talking about that. When he talks about corruption, what he talks about is people, supposedly the supposed deep state going after him and persecuting him. We've seen a real shift in focus. And I think despite the sort of claims of populism that get attached to Trump, and maybe the reasons that people voted for him for populist reasons in this election, what we see is he's putting in very wealthy people, very powerful people in industry and people in lobbyists. And you're going to see an administration that has policies that reflect that, obviously.
Barbara, I haven't had an opportunity to talk to a lawyer in a long time, and so the glasses are coming off as usual. This is a legal question, but it's more so an administrative DOJ question. One would want to believe that at some point, the weaponization of the DOJ, if it does get to that, will garner some pushback internally within. As someone who has been a U.S. attorney, what do you think that would look like? Or do you think that there won't be any resistance because of the direction given by the Attorney General himself or herself?
I think it'll be very interesting to see, most of the people who work at the Justice Department, 95%, 99% are career professionals who have worked in various administrations and who know that politics may play no role in legal decision making. Now, if you have leaders who are pushing you to do that, sometimes the way to push back is to refuse to do something, in which case you may be fired, or to resign. And so I worry that in the long term, if those good people who care about the rule of law leave, they will be replaced by people who are Trump loyalists and willing to do the bidding of a Pam Bondi or a Kash Patel. So I think in the short term, I'm cautiously optimistic, but I do worry about the loss of some of those great experienced and talented and lawyers of great integrity when they are pushed and may ultimately be pushed out.
You raise a good point when you use the word integrity, and I think that that's something that we all need to keep in mind. David, turning to you, NBC just confirmed reports that Steve Witkoff, the Middle East envoy for the incoming Trump administration, went and met with the prime ministers of Israel and Qatar in late November to discuss the potential of a ceasefire deal. We're learning about this just days after Donald Trump demanded that hostages be released by Inauguration Day. In other words, there will be, quote, all hell to pay in the Middle East. What do you make of these meetings in advance of inauguration and how the incoming administration is approaching the entire conflict between Israel and Hamas?
I mean, I think the first thing to say is, and we saw this also with the images from Paris there of Trump meeting with Macron, we effectively have two presidents. I mean, Trump is conducting his own foreign policy before he has been elected president. We've had reports of Elon Musk meeting with Iranian officials. We have these. So you see him sort of doing his own thing before he's taken office. And I think that is unusual, unprecedented, and worth pointing out. You know, as to what the policy might look like, we're seeing the outlines of a sort of hawkish policy. And Trump used that in the Middle East throughout his first administration, whether that was launching attacks on Iran, things that members of the administration held him back from doing, like attacks on Syria. You know, I think we're going to see that again. He intends to throw his weight around, and he's very clearly strongly in the Israeli camp.
That was Barbara McQuaid and David Graham. Thank you to you both. And a quick programming note. Tomorrow morning on Meet the Press, catch Kristen Welker's full interview and exclusive with President-elect Donald Trump, his first TV interview since winning the 2024 election. That's going to be tomorrow on Meet the Press, only on NBC. And coming up, the Supreme Court heard what is likely the most consequential trans rights case in history this week. But when the decision comes down, its impact could reach well beyond the trans community. And then, the start of a new Trump administration has a lot of civil rights lawyers worried. And I'm one of them. I'll talk about what's at stake and the danger of underestimating the urgency of this very moment with two giants in the civil rights field, Janae Nelson and Derek Johnson. I'm Charles Coleman Jr., and there's a lot more Velshi coming up after a short break.
Today, Grady turns 1. Already he plans to wrestle alligators, try his hand at the culinary arts, and explore the world. With the Get College Saving Program, you can start saving for their future anywhere in the country. Don't borrow your children's future, build it at 529.wa.gov.
All right, I'm loose. 24 years ago, 5'2", 8. I think I get under.
As someone once said, it's got to be the shoes.
Tom, on you.
Go.
Oh, baby! 518.
If you do that 25 years ago, you get